My name is Michael Grant. I'm a major in the United States Army. I've spent most of my adult life in uniform, serving in places where decisions are made under pressure and reactions can be the difference between life and death. But nothing in my service prepared me for what I would face in my own home. Nothing prepared me for the quiet betrayal of someone I once believed would never lie to me. That summer, Rachel suggested we take a vacation, just the two of us. No kids, no friends, just us, a beach house in Florida, some time to reconnect. I had just returned from a 9-month deployment. My body was tired, but my mind was hopeful. I needed the peace. I needed to feel like the man she married again. Instead, I walked into the last place our marriage would exist. From the moment we arrived, something was off. Rachel smiled too much, but not at me. She laughed at texts and slipped away to take phone calls. Her phone was always face down. Twice, I walked in from the bathroom and caught her quickly locking the screen, whispering, "I have to go." Before putting on a forced smile, I didn't ask questions. I'd learned better. In war, you watch patterns. You wait for proof, so I pretended. I smiled when she smiled. I held her hand when she offered it. I played the part, but I was watching, listening, waiting. One night, I pretended to sleep. Her breathing was calm, but her hands moved nervously. At 1:13 a.m., she got up, tiptoed across the room, phone in hand, and slipped into the guest room. I followed silently. Her voice was low, but the words cut deep. "I miss you too. Last night was perfect." There was a pause. He has no idea. I stood there, frozen, listening to the sound of my own heart slow down, not because I was breaking, because I was processing. She had made her move. Now it was time for me to make mine. The next day, I acted like nothing happened. I made coffee. I made her laugh. She kissed my cheek. It took everything in me not to pull away. She kept sneaking out, kept making calls, and I kept gathering evidence. I wasn't angry. I was methodical. Every photo she sent, every message that synced to our shared cloud, I saved. I downloaded timestamps. Call histories, screenshots. I knew better than to confront her in emotion. I knew that wars are not won by shouting, they're won by preparation. On the fourth day, I told her I was visiting an old army buddy nearby. She encouraged it, even seemed relieved. I drove 30 minutes to a parking lot, opened my laptop, and began organizing. I created folders. I copied files. I called a military attorney. I moved half our savings to a private account under my name, only something I had set up months earlier when things first felt wrong. The next night, she came home late, said she had gone for a walk. I nodded, asked her if she had fun. She said it was peaceful. I looked at her and said, "You look happy." She smiled. "I am." That night I couldn't sleep, not because of pain, because I knew this was no longer the woman I married. This was a stranger wearing my wife's face. I lay in the dark and thought about how I had built my life around her. I joined the army and rose through the ranks thinking I was protecting something, a home, a future, a partnership. But that night, I realized I had only been building walls around someone who had already walked away. When we returned home, it took less than 2 days for the truth to finish what she had started. I came home from base and found an envelope on the counter. My name was typed across the front. Inside were divorce papers, no note, no apology, just a legal form signed and dated. She had filed while I was away. She had emptied our joint account. She had made sure the house deed, which was in my name thanks to the VA loan, could no longer be transferred. She had removed herself from the lease and moved out. It was all done, final, planned. But what she didn't know was that I had been planning too. She took the money, I had taken the proof. She made the first move, I would make the last. I sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and reviewed everything I had stored: messages, images, videos, even a clip of her live call while I watched from the hallway. It wasn't revenge I felt, it was silence, cold, sharp, strategic. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to finish this the way I had finished every battle before it, with precision. That night, she texted me, "I hope we can be civil." I replied with one word, "Understood." And then I called my lawyer. I woke up the morning after she served me the papers like it was just another Monday. No yelling, no fight, no storm, just silence. My training had taught me to stay composed under pressure, and this was no different. I stood in the shower that morning staring at the tile wall, wondering when exactly she stopped being my wife. Was it when she lied the first time, or when I pretended not to hear? Maybe it was when I said understood instead of why. Either way, the marriage was over. I dried off, shaved, and got dressed for the day like any other soldier would, with order and purpose. When I walked into the kitchen, she was standing there, wearing my shirt, holding a coffee mug like she belonged. She smiled, soft and simple. Morning. She said, "Did you sleep okay?" I nodded, sure. I sat down. She handed me coffee. It was surreal, like we were actors in a scene where the script didn't match reality. She had served me divorce papers, and now she was asking how I slept. I watched her closely. Her body moved like it always did, graceful, but a little too rehearsed. Her voice had warmth, but her eyes gave her away. She was trying to pretend too, trying to keep the illusion that this was just a conversation between two people who used to love each other, instead of two people who knew the truth but weren't saying it out loud. I let her talk about the weather, about errands, about how her friend Melissa was thinking of moving to California. I nodded, contributed, acted interested, but my mind was elsewhere. I had an appointment with my attorney at noon. I had documents to file, accounts to finalize, passwords to reset. She didn't know it, but her access to my world had already been revoked. I left the house at 10. She kissed my cheek as I stepped outside. My body didn't flinch, but my stomach did. That used to mean something. Now it was just muscle memory. At the lawyer's office, I handed over a folder labeled evidence. Inside were 37 pages of printed messages, call logs, and images, all neatly time-stamped. My lawyer, a retired GAG officer named Thompson, didn't say much. Just flipped through each page, nodding, lips pressed tight. "You're not here to fight for her," he finally said. "You're here to make sure she walks away with nothing." I nodded. Exactly. He laid out the timeline. Divorce strategy, what we'd push for, what we'd freeze. The assets were mostly in my name thanks to military benefits, pension, insurance, house, vehicles. Rachel had walked away from this marriage thinking she was taking everything. But she forgot I had built everything. By the time I returned home, she was gone for the day. I sat in the living room, looking at the photo on the mantel, the one of us in uniform at our wedding. She looked proud in that picture. Or maybe just young. I remembered the first time I saw her cry. It was when my father passed away. She held me for hours without saying a word. That version of her was gone now, replaced by someone who smiled at me while sleeping with someone else. Someone who handed me divorce papers while wearing my sweatshirt, and yet I didn't hate her, not the way you'd expect. I didn't feel rage, I felt hollow, and in that hollow space I started to rebuild. The next few days were strange. We existed like roommates, shared meals, shared space, but not words that meant anything. I caught her crying one night in the bathroom. The door was cracked just enough. She thought I couldn't hear, but I did. I heard the kind of crying that comes from guilt, not pain. I almost walked in, almost held her, almost asked why, but I didn't, because I remembered the calls. The laughter, the lies. Instead, I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling. I thought about my unit, about the men who'd never made it home, about how they died with loyalty in their hearts, and how I was still here betrayed in my own home, by someone I would have taken a bullet for. On Friday morning, she made pancakes, my favorite. We hadn't had breakfast together in weeks. She sat across from me, smiled like old times. I was thinking. She began, "Maybe we don't have to be bitter about all this. Maybe we can be friendly, mature." I looked at her. Really looked, and for the first time I saw her not as my wife, not even as a betrayer, but as a stranger. Someone I used to know. I nodded. "Sure," I said, friendly. That day I moved the last of my belongings into the guest room. I changed the locks on the garage, updated my emergency contacts at base, and made a quiet call to my commanding officer. I requested temporary relocation, just 2 months, enough time to close the chapter. That night, I sat outside on the porch alone. I could hear her inside, laughing on the phone again. Maybe it was him. Maybe it wasn't. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I wasn't broken. I wasn't angry. I was focused. She thought she had fooled me. She thought I was the fool who never saw it coming. But what she didn't realize was that I had been preparing for war my entire life, and this was just another battlefield. The weekend passed like a memory I didn't want. Rachel and I barely spoke. When we did, it was surface level, like co-workers making small talk. The woman I once loved now moved through the house like a visitor, her voice soft, her footsteps quiet. But I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't hoping for her to come back to who she was. I knew that woman was gone. In her place stood someone I couldn't recognize and didn't need to. What she didn't know was that while she thought I was falling apart, I was becoming someone else entirely. Not bitter, not broken, but deliberate, focused, cold in a way I had never been before because love had left me, and in its place came clarity. Monday morning, I put on my uniform with more purpose than I had in years. My ribbons lined the chest, my name over the heart she broke. I looked in the mirror and saw not a husband, not a victim. I saw a soldier, one who had survived worse, endured more, and now carried the kind of strength no one could fake. I went to base, met with my commanding officer, and explained my request for emergency leave. When he asked why, I didn't lie. My marriage was a battlefield. I lost the house, but I won the war. He looked at me for a long moment before nodding. Take the time, come back clean. I spent that week assembling everything: financial separation, asset protection, passwords updated, bills rerouted. I opened a P.O. box, updated my military records, changed my emergency contacts from her to my cousin Jake, a man who had always stood by me when no one else did. I updated my will. I removed her name from every account, every plan, every part of my legacy. What she took in secret I erased in broad daylight. She thought she could strip away my life behind my back. I dismantled her illusion in front of her eyes. Every night she came home later, hair different, nails done, new clothes. Once I watched her from the upstairs window as she got out of a black SUV, not our car, and hugged someone goodbye. It wasn't subtle. She didn't care if I saw, or maybe she thought I wouldn't react. She was right, I didn't, because that version of me, the one who would have cried or begged, had died somewhere between her lies and my silence. In his place stood a man who didn't chase, only prepared. I started going to the gym again, reconnected with old friends, had coffee with my mentor from West Point, laughed genuinely for the first time in months. I wasn't trying to show off. I was just shedding the weight she left on me. Every moment of self-doubt, every second of what did I do wrong. I lifted off my shoulders like a sandbag after a long march. The man she thought couldn't live without her, he no longer existed. In his place stood a soldier who was ready for the next mission, a life without her. One afternoon, she walked in as I was on a call with my lawyer. I didn't pause. I kept speaking. Yes, I want to move forward with full custodial rights on the accounts. She can contest, but I have documentation to show misconduct. She stood there in the doorway, blinking. Who was that? She asked when I hung up. I didn't smile. Thompson, legal counsel. She paused. You're being really cold about this. I tilted my head. Did you expect tears? She looked away. I just thought you'd be more emotional. I almost laughed. But I didn't, because this wasn't funny. It was the final act of a play I didn't ask to star in. You don't get to be surprised by the man I became. I said, you made him. She left the room. The next day, she didn't come home. I assumed she was with him, whoever he was. The mystery man who thought he'd won something. All he really got was the shell of a marriage he didn't help build, and the leftovers of a woman who didn't value loyalty. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. By Friday, the last pieces were in motion. I met with a financial advisor. I moved my remaining retirement accounts. I filed the final motion with the court. My lawyer called it clean separation. I called it freedom. I came home that night, sat at the kitchen table, and wrote a letter, not to her, to myself. It was the closure I never got. The kind of letter soldiers write before battle, not because they expect to die, but because they want to remember who they are if they survive. It said, I am not what she broke. I am what I rebuilt. I am not the man who got left behind. I am the man who walked away when he knew he deserved better. And no matter what she thinks, I don't need revenge. I only need peace. I folded it, put it in my drawer, and exhaled. She had underestimated me, thought I'd collapse, thought I'd fall apart, but all she really did was set me free from the illusion that she ever deserved me. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't curse her name. I simply became the man she thought I could never be, strong without her, whole without her love, and free without her lies. His name was Drew. I didn't know that until I saw it printed on the top of an employment record I quietly pulled through a mutual connection in town. He worked in sales at a regional tech supplier. Nothing special, no military service, no commendations, no history worth noting. Just a guy with a wide smile, a half-buttoned shirt, and a job that made him feel important. He was 6 years younger than Rachel, 5 years younger than me, and the kind of man who probably thought having a military man's wife meant he'd won some prize. But this wasn't about him. Not really. This was about me, about closure, about making sure I faced everything, even him. I could have ignored him, could have let Rachel disappear with her new fantasy life, but that would have left a thread hanging. One loose end, one face I hadn't seen with my own eyes, and after everything she'd done in whispers, I wanted one moment of honesty even if I had to drag it out of someone else. So I called in a favor from a friend who owed me. Got Drew's schedule, knew where he liked to eat after work, and on a quiet Wednesday evening I walked into that same bar and took the stool 2 seats down from him. He didn't recognize me at first. I wore jeans, a plain t-shirt, nothing flashy. I ordered a bourbon, watched him scroll his phone, laughed to himself, probably texting her. I gave it 5 minutes before I turned and said, "You, Drew." He looked up, confused. "Yeah." I nodded. "You know who I am." He stared, slowly piecing it together. The military build, the age, the cold stare. "Oh," he said, setting his drink down, "you're Rachel's husband," I said, "still legally, for another 4 days." He went quiet. I could see the panic creeping in behind his eyes, like a kid caught shoplifting. "Look, man," he began, "I didn't mean—" I raised a hand. "Stop. I'm not here to hit you. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm not even here to blame you." He blinked. "You're not." I shook my head. "No, you're not the villain in this story. You're the shadow she chose to dance with. But I'm the man who built that house, paid for the cars, bought the dog, renovated the kitchen you probably drink coffee in, and I'm the man who served his country while you warmed his bed." He looked away. Embarrassed, I didn't know she was married at first. He muttered. I nodded. "I believe that, but you knew eventually." He didn't deny it, didn't argue. That told me everything I needed to know. He was weak, not dangerous. A man who took what was offered, no matter the cost. She's not mine anymore. I said, "You don't have to pretend she is, but you should understand something." He looked up. "She doesn't stay where she plants lies. Eventually, they poison the ground." He didn't respond. Just stared into his drink. "Does she love you?" I asked. He hesitated. I think so. Do you trust her?" He didn't answer. I stood, dropped a 20 on the bar. "She's all yours now. House is in my name, so I hope she likes renting. Joint accounts are closed, and the divorce is finalized this week. You won't hear from me again. But one day, when she turns away from you the same way she turned from me, I hope you remember this conversation." I turned to walk away, but paused. One last thing. He looked up again. "If she ever tells you I was the bad guy, ask her why she never once looked me in the eye when she lied." I left without waiting for his response. That night I drove to the edge of town, sat in the car overlooking the hills, the same place Rachel and I used to visit when we first started dating. I let the memories come, not to hurt me, but to bury them. Every laugh, every kiss, every plan we made on that hill meant nothing now. They were ghosts, and I was ready to let them rest. The next morning, I sent her a message. "Divorce is finalized. Your copies are in the envelope on the counter. House will be listed next month. I'll be gone before then." No signature, no goodbye, just facts. She didn't reply. That afternoon, I moved into a temporary apartment near base. Simple, clean, quiet. I didn't bring much. Just clothes, a few photos of my parents, and the watch my grandfather gave me before he died. I didn't need reminders of her. She was part of a story I'd closed. Now I was writing a new one. That weekend I met with a therapist. First session. I'd avoided it for years, always thought it meant weakness. But sitting across from that stranger, telling my story not as a soldier, but as a man, it felt like pulling shrapnel from the chest. Painful, but necessary. What do you want now? The therapist asked me at the end. I thought about it, looked out the window, and finally said, peace and maybe someday. Truth, I didn't leave a note, I didn't leave a key, I just left. One quiet morning before sunrise, I packed what little I still owned in that house, a few boxes, a suitcase, a folded flag, and a worn photograph of my parents, and I walked out the front door for the last time. Floor creaked beneath my boots like it always did. The walls echoed with the absence of love. The dog we once owned now lived with my sister. The garden was overgrown. Rachel's car wasn't in the driveway. That felt right, because by then she was already gone, long before I ever turned the knob. I stood on the porch for a full minute before walking to my truck. The sun hadn't come up yet, and the whole street was quiet. You could almost believe nothing bad had ever happened here, almost, but I knew better. This was the battlefield she never saw, a war fought in silence, in glances, in late night whispers on a phone she thought I'd never hear. I didn't slam the door, I didn't peel out, I just drove. The apartment was small, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I lived in a place where every decision was mine. No need to tiptoe around moods or lie to myself about a future that no longer existed. I got into a rhythm, wake up early, hit the gym, report to base, meet with my counselor twice a week, eat alone, sleep well, heal quietly. There was something sacred about the simplicity, something peaceful about no longer needing to explain myself to someone who stopped listening years ago. Then came the message. 2 weeks after the divorce finalized, Rachel texted me, not an apology, not a request, just 6 words, can we talk, just once more. I stared at the screen for a long time. My thumb hovered over the delete button. But something in me needed to hear what she had to say, not for closure, not for answers, just to prove to myself that I no longer cared. I replied with a time and a public place. She agreed. We met at a coffee shop near the old neighborhood. I arrived early, took the seat facing the door, back against the wall habit. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Same face, different energy, nervous, uncertain. She used to walk with confidence. Now she looked like someone who wasn't sure how to stand in front of a man she once knew by heart. Hi, she said. Rachel. I nodded. She sat down slowly, as if expecting me to tell her to leave. I didn't. I let the silence stretch. She broke it. You look good. I feel good. She nodded, looked down at her coffee, then up at me. I didn't think you'd agree to meet. I sipped my drink. You asked. I had 10 minutes. She flinched. I didn't mean it to hurt, but I wasn't there to soften truths anymore. She looked at me with eyes I used to love. Now they just looked tired. I wanted to say. She started, then paused. I don't know what I wanted to say. I said nothing. I know I handled everything wrong. She continued. I know I hurt you, and I guess I thought I owed you an apology. I nodded. You do, but I don't need it. That caught her off guard. You don't. No, because apologies don't fix actions, and I stopped needing words from you the day your actions told me everything I needed to know. She swallowed. I didn't plan for things to happen like that. I'm sure you didn't, but you still made every choice. She nodded slowly. I didn't think you'd recover this well. I almost laughed. You thought I'd collapse. I thought you'd fight, yell, demand answers, maybe even hate me. I did all that. I said, just not where you could see it, and only once. Then I decided you weren't worth the damage I'd do to myself by staying in that pain. She wiped her eye. I was scared. I didn't know how to leave. I didn't want to hurt you. You didn't want to feel guilty. I corrected. That's not the same thing. More silence. You loved me once. She whispered, I still do, but it's not the kind of love that wants you back. It's the kind that wishes you peace from a distance, far, far away. She looked down at her hands. The ones I used to hold, the ones that used to reach for me in the middle of the night. Now she kept them folded, unsure if they even had a place on the table. I'm not happy, she admitted, I know. You always knew how to see through me. I had to. You stopped saying things out loud a long time ago. I thought I needed someone different. You needed someone easier. I said, someone who didn't challenge you, someone who didn't remind you of your own promises. I thought you'd always wait for me. I used to, but then I remembered who I was before you, and I liked that man better. The clock behind her ticked toward the hour. I stood. I wish things had ended differently. She said, they did. I replied, you just didn't notice it until now. She stood too, so this is it. I nodded, this is peace. I turned and walked out, sunlight spilling across the sidewalk like a new beginning. I didn't look back. I didn't need to, because the man walking away from her wasn't the broken husband she left behind. He was someone rebuilt from pain, someone stronger, smarter, free. You don't really notice when you lose yourself. It doesn't happen all at once. It's not a single moment or one fight or one silence that lingers too long. It's a slow erosion of your voice, your needs, your joy. You let things slide. You give in. You compromise until one day you wake up and you're a shadow wearing someone else's clothes, smiling through someone else's dream. That's who I had become in my marriage, and that's who I buried when I walked away. What followed wasn't revenge, it wasn't bitterness, it was rediscovery. My name is Michael Reese. I'm 42. I've served in the United States Army for over 2 decades. I've jumped from planes, led missions in places I can't talk about, buried brothers who wore the same patch I did. I've been a soldier longer than I've been anything else, but for a while I forgot that. I let myself become just Rachel's husband, her plus one, her background, but after everything, after the betrayal, the silence, the lies, I found something she never saw coming, myself. It started small. I reconnected with who I was before the marriage, before the years blurred together. I picked up my old guitar, the one I'd stored away in a closet for a decade. My fingers remembered more than I expected. Music didn't fix me, but it reminded me I could still create something, that I wasn't just a machine built for war. I went hiking again, places Rachel always complained were too quiet or too far, but I liked the quiet. In the silence, I could hear myself think, and I was starting to like the man who showed up in those thoughts. I joined a veteran outreach group, not because I needed help, but because I needed to help someone. There's healing in service, not the kind that wears medals, but the kind that sits beside a stranger and says, me too. We shared stories, some darker than mine, some eerily familiar. One guy, a former Navy corpsman, said something I still carry with me. Sometimes the hardest battle isn't in combat. It's convincing yourself you're still worth saving. I nodded, because I knew exactly what he meant. I started training younger recruits, not full-time, just as a mentor. I watched them walk in cocky, eager, terrified, and I saw versions of myself in each one. I taught them not just how to be soldiers, but how to be men who didn't lose themselves along the way. I told them about leadership, about honor, about heartbreak. I never said her name, but they knew. Pain has a way of showing up in your voice, no matter how well you hide it. And then, slowly, life opened up again. I met someone I didn't expect to. I wasn't looking. But there she was teaching a first aid workshop for our unit's civilian staff. Her name was Claire. She wasn't flashy. She didn't have 1,000 followers on social media. But she laughed with her whole face. She listened when I spoke, even when I didn't say much. We grabbed coffee once, then again. She never asked about my past, not right away. She just let me be who I was now, not who I used to be. That was enough. One night, she asked me what I really wanted out of the next 10 years. I'd never been asked that in a way that didn't sound like a trap. I thought for a long time. Finally, I said, I want quiet mornings, honest conversations, and someone who doesn't run when things get heavy. She smiled. That's not much. I shook my head. That's everything. And I realized then I wasn't rebuilding the old version of me. I was building someone new, someone forged by fire but not defined by it, someone who had been broken but refused to stay shattered. The pain Rachel caused didn't ruin me, it refined me. I still think about her sometimes. Not with anger, not with longing, just as a chapter in a book I no longer reread. She taught me what I didn't want. She showed me who I never wanted to become, and for that I'm strangely grateful. because without that collapse, I might never have found the courage to stand tall again. I remember who I was before her not because I want to go back, but because he's part of the man I am now, strong, clear, whole. If you're reading this, and you're where I was broken, abandoned, unsure, let me say this to you the way I wish someone had said it to me. You are not unlovable just because someone stopped loving you. You are not broken just because someone left you in pieces. You are not finished just because one chapter ended. And the silence you're sitting in right now, that's not the end. It's the beginning of you finally hearing your own voice again. Walk out the door, start over. You'll find yourself out there. I did.